and both have been doing really well. So there's clearly a shift of people out of cities into the suburbs, which is an opportunity that we need to harness as a region. So it's also worth noting for those of you who pay attention to local sales tax coffers, new and used cars are doing very well, which I think is an important bright spot. But with respect to housing, it's important to understand we have a very tight market nationwide. Normally, you want to have a 6-month supply of housing. And now we're down nationwide to just 2.5 months. Obviously, California always is more impacted. So I say all of that with a big caveat, which is that locally, we're going to need to dive in deeply to the expanded universe of people who have dropped out or stayed out of the job market because of caregiving responsibilities or other COVID-related burdens. So, so I think that's something definitely that we're gonna pursue. So, but more good news. You'll see as of yesterday, our COVID data has us in the orange. I've never been happier to be moderate. It's a little joke for those of you who know where I fall on the spectrum, but so we're considered moderate spread, which has some important implications for restaurant capacity and other types of businesses that can reopen, increases capacity for houses of worship. If you've missed bowling alleys can reopen. For my counterpart, Casey Bayer at the Santa Cruz Chamber, it's a big deal that the boardwalk there is going to reopen. You know, that's related to $1 billion of economic activity down there. So, and it's been in business since 1907. So, but the governor's advice yesterday was full of caution about how we need to stay vigilant to stay at these levels, right? So the state's epicenter of COVID outbreaks remains in Southern California, but obviously there's a lot of interconnectedness. So we've seen the rest of the nation struggle with outbreaks since they were able to reopen bars and increase indoor dining, which is now what we're allowed to do. So, so that's sort of the economic picture, and I just think it's important to always keep that in mind as we develop any strategy. So again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to be able to talk about it here, but the two strategies from Bookings Metro that we're really interested in looking that we pointed you toward is, you know, the Central Indiana Rapid Reemployment, and then the people-focused strategy to support manufacturing out of Chicago. So we're really interested in supporting these middle-skill job creation. And I know there's folks on the line like Heather Fontanella doing such important work-based learning things for Mount Diablo Unified, exactly in this space. And so we've got a lot of expertise here in the group. So, so anyway, I'll pause there to ask if there's any questions from anyone before we dive into reviewing the goals of the groups and then head into the small groups. Any economic questions? Anybody? Yeah, Keith.
Yeah, actually, the only question I have is I'm on the manufacturing talking group. One of the things we talked about was getting connected to the things that are going on already, things that CCEP is doing, manufacturing work that different groups are doing, as well as the Northern Waterfront strategy. So not sure where that's at in terms of the suggestions we've made.
Yeah. No, that is 100% true. And thankfully we have some of the folks that are, you know, doing manufacturing. Pam Kahn is here, looking at you, Pam, who can help inform that work. And obviously the landscape is changing a lot. You know, that we have Patty Deutsch here, and obviously everything that happened, you know, Marathon, what happened with Marathon's significant change and permanent idle there really has shifted the landscape. So I do think it's important to just take all the Northern Waterfront things. And obviously, Keith, you were so involved with that, especially, you know, the human development, human capital side of that, and just build on it, not start new, not, you know, and just, and so for the purposes of our short time together, I would just advise your small group to, if something strikes you that's in the conversation that just doesn't scan or isn't correct or isn't complete, fill in that gap and then put a pin in it. And again, we'll do the legwork between the meetings to help move it forward. Does that sound good?
Perfect. Thank you, Kristen.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, great. So then we will keep going. So just to think about, again, the task force goals, we want to align existing efforts, track and guide actions to support job creation, identify and promote policies to attract and retain employers, same strategy around increasing access to employment and expand connections to training employment for those disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's just important to stay grounded in all of that. And so what we're going to be doing is that, again, we've got these 5 small groups that you can see on the screen. And what we're going to do is break up into them. Here's your task. Make sure you all know who each other is with an introduction. You're going to identify a facilitator and a note taker. And actually, hey, Mark, can I impose on you to talk about the collaborative space real quick? Is that something that's okay to do? I know you're kind of like,
yeah, no, that's fine. So I threw a link in the chat. So if you wanted to take your notes in there, then you don't have to email them to anybody, right? This folder's set up and Google Documents already open. So if that's something you want to do, you can work that way. And other people in your group could be in that file as well. It just depends how your small group wants to function. We wanted to create that space for some people who had requested it. So that's all. If you do have any questions after the meeting, you can email me. But that link will take you where you need to go.
Okay, great. And actually, I did see that we have had a couple more folks join since the start of Ankit. Can I lean on you? And I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, to just introduce yourself real quick before we go to small groups.
Sure. My name is Ankit. I am owner of 5-Star Textile Restoration and 5-Star Dry Cleaners. We're a dry cleaning company. We service about 80+ hotels, and we're helping a lot of families out during this whole entire crazy fire season and the whole fires that have been going out currently. So glad to be part of the group, and hopefully I can help out.
Okay, great. So then just to go back to, thank you for joining us. What we're going to be doing is, and if you haven't joined us, we are still gonna, if you haven't joined us before, we're gonna be go ahead and assigning you to a breakout room. But I did just want to go back to the slide, and it's all in the chat now about what the different responsibilities are. So, again, intro, identify a facilitator and a note taker, share and recap summary since the last meeting, and what are some action steps that can occur between now and November? What actionable item or policy recommendations will your group concentrate on? I did also forget to just sort of be more, in the interest of time, I did skip part of my notes, which was around the bad news part of what's happening, is that I think all of us need to assume that there won't be any federal stimulus for some time. Obviously, we're a week out from an election that will have some ramifications about what that looks like. And there are all kinds of pundits that are trying to guess about what that would look like. But I will say that as someone who represents the business community, my counterparts around the state are really disappointed with the silence of the state legislature as it relates to economic recovery. And I think that's definitely, we have been in touch with some of our local legislators, and it's important. Now is the time to give them the ideas for what we want carried in the next session to begin to help stimulate the economy. For example, there was talk of $100 billion stimulus plan that would use existing but not yet used bond authority that's been approved by voters, and that just died in the legislature. It didn't go anywhere. And so there is going to be, I think, a real imperative, no matter what topic you're working on, and as I look at you, you're up on my screen currently, Linda, but I mean, as on the broadband group, I think that there really will be some pointed recommendations to the state legislature and others, so to work on issues. So, Lindy, unless you say otherwise, I think we can flip the switch. We're going to spend the bulk of the rest of the meeting in the small groups. We're going to come back and report out, and just thanks in advance.
Yeah, so you will be getting a notification very quickly that's letting you know to go into your breakout room. I just wanted to let everyone who's new and joining us for the first time that you have been put into funding priorities group. The task that's kind of been assigned or that you've been asked to consider today relates to funding for support for small business. So for some of you were put in that group because of your knowledge and expertise around needs of small business. But obviously it's something we're happy to continue to explore if you feel like there's a group that might better suit you. I also if there is anyone who's interested particularly in doing wage subsidy work, but is in that funding group, let me know, because I could switch you over to that group, and there is less people there today for that group than we normally have. So other than that, I'm going to open up our breakout rooms. Again, the funding group is going to stay here in the main room. So Kristen, Devora, and that whole group, you'll be right here. You won't be getting a notification to exit.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lindy. And we'll see you after your Zoom back. Leslie, hello.
Leslie, hello.
I was excited when I saw you in the waiting room.
I'm sorry. I have a kid issue today. It's a health thing, so we'll see how it goes.
Oh, no. Yeah. Okay. Well, good thoughts there.
Thank you.
So we have, I did want to just recognize that we have a couple new folks who've been able to introduce themselves. Thank you so much for joining us. A few new folks, in fact.
I know, I'm so excited.
Yeah, no, well done, Leslie. So let's just sort of follow our own instructions and make sure that just take a moment to make sure everybody knows who's here. I'm Kristen Connolly. I'm the executive director of the Contra Costa Economic Partnership. And I am 1/3 of the organizations behind this work, along with I'm looking at Devorah Levine, who's with the Employment and Human Services Department of Contra Costa, that along with the Workforce Development Board is sponsoring this work. So we're glad to have you. So I'm just gonna point around the room and ask you to introduce yourself. Vic, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Vic Baker, PG&E.
All right. Lights are on. Good job. Liz Fuller, you introduced yourself before, but there were a couple people that weren't on the line. So just quickly.
Sure. I'm from the library and I'm in charge of programming. So we're doing a lot of virtual stuff these days and would love to partner with folks for job seeking or small business needs.
Great. All right, Jim, you're up for those who haven't joined yet.
Hey guys, I'm Jim Hammock. I'm the owner of Nerd Crossing in El Sobrante, California.
Excellent. Leticia. Oh, you got to unmute yourself. There you go.
I'm Letty Kizon from Coco Kids. We help families. We provide subsidized childcare and referrals so people can go back to work, can find work and continue to work. And on a personal basis, I'm part of an initiative from MBA alumni of St. Mary's College, helping small businesses ramp up, stay in business, or pivot in the new normal.
That's great. Ankit, you're next.
Hey, I'm owner of 5-Star Textile Restoration, 5-Star Cleaners. We service a lot of hotels in the Bay Area. We do a lot of pickup and delivery for dry cleaning as well. And our primary focus lately has been helping families with fires. From Santa Cruz to Napa and everywhere. So.
Yeah, talk about an important pivot. Devorah.
Yeah, hi everyone, Devorah Levine. I'm with the Employment and Human Services Department, which is the social services agency for the county.
Okay. Ruth Fernandez.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ruth Fernandez, Executive Director with First 5 Contra Costa. And at First 5, our work is to ensure all young children are healthy, safe, and ready to enter school. So our business is ensuring that families across the county are supported through our First 5 centers. We work with the early care and education workforce, and through other partners in the county, other organizations, we promote early intervention services and really see our work as supporting the ecosystem for families with young children. Good to be here.
Great. Megan Joseph.
Great. Hi, everyone. This is Megan. I'm the owner of Impact Launch. That's strange to say, but I am a small business owner now. I've been in the nonprofit sector for over a decade until about a year ago. What a year to start a business. But we are the host of the Leadership for Equity and Opportunity program, which got one cohort in Contra Costa before COVID hit. And we support a lot of nonprofits and service providers et cetera, across the Bay Area. We have about 900 alumni across the Bay. And so we're just very happy to be here and be sort of listening in and understanding where we might be able to support your next moves.
Great. Patience, I know that. So I sent a message. I don't have that permission to send you to the other group, but I would love for you to stay if you would be willing. So can you introduce yourself? Oh, you're muted. Still muted. Oh, it looks like you froze actually. Oh,
okay, so.
Oh, actually, I think you're about to disappear. I think Lindy is going to send you away. Okay, so let's go to Leslie Choi. Yep, it happened. There it goes.
That was Patience Ofudu. She does business
yes.
services, Contra Costa Workforce Development Board. She's fantastic. Works with Donna Van Wert and Charles Brown. I'm Leslie Choi. I'm the executive director of the San Paulo EDC. We work here in West County, but across the county to create opportunity.
That's excellent. And just thank you, Leslie, for recruiting our two new small business owners and helping us with this work. It's just so great. And then last but not least, Mark Orcutt.
Communications Director, Contra Costa Economic Partnership.
So, as with so many small businesses, those of us at a small nonprofit, we wear lots of hats. So I feel like Mark needs 10 titles now with his job. Okay, so Devora, do you want to drive our bus? Do you want me to drive our bus?
Well, I feel like you're driving really well. Why don't I take notes?
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, so there is no question that it feels a little bit like we are in a bit of a waiting period as we're 1 week out from an election where there is a ballot measure on the ballot, Measure X and Contra Costa, that actually would unleash some more funding for us. I do think, though, it is safe. We shouldn't say that it's going to magically happen without us, but it is entirely possible, and it would be incredibly helpful if there were additional funds from philanthropic sources, from the state government and from the federal government. I know that a number of different partners have asked if there are discrete things that we could be doing to help small business that has a price tag of X, whether it's 5 or 6 figures, to do something. They would love to fund that and figure out how to deploy that. And so I would love to harness this really smart energy to keep the conversation going about what can and should be supported. And I want to just take advantage of the new energy and expertise that's in this group to really start to drill down on that. Because I do want us to, if in fact Contra Costa does pass Measure X and there is additional funding, I think we are very well justified in strongly advocating that an economic development investment makes a whole lot of sense. And so, so I would just love to talk about and if I could just maybe, Leslie, I'm going to put you on the spot, maybe as you've thought about this a little bit systemically, and then ask Jim and Ankit to contribute. But in terms of, because my perception is that we had the PPP program, which did not, which is now well documented in the fact that it did not help underbanked and small businesses. It helps some, but it disproportionately, again, didn't come through. And also that came and went with an expectation that the economy would be up and running. I mean, obviously, Ankit, you've had to pivot to helping families affected by fires because hotels are still largely not full. I know that our drive up dry cleaner guy just says, could you just start wearing fancier clothes again on these Zoom calls? Cause right, we've sent 3 things out in 7 months. And so, I mean, the struggle is real. So I do think it's important to think about, and look, it could be that we are starting to talk about a guaranteed income for people and some other really dynamic things in 6 or 12 months time at the federal level. But I want us to kind of drill down, what could we do discreetly now to help people and keep building on what we've talked about before. So can I put you on the spot, Leslie, and kind of share some thoughts?
You absolutely can. And for better or for worse, I'm going to put it almost immediately over to Jim and Ankit for a couple of different reasons. But one is, Jim just helped lead a group of, we just did a forum of small business owners, and, he heard a lot from a lot of different people. I saw the notes, Jim. It's not any different than the things we've been hearing. I think one of the things that disturbed me most was, okay, as an EDC, we understand that there are a lot of businesses out there that they qualify, but they can't take advantage because they simply don't have their systems in order. You know, they're not keeping track of their financials the same way. They don't have the type of bookkeeping that they should have to instantly be able to report. I mean, a P&L is not that difficult. And then again, if you've never done it and you've always successfully sort of ran your business, it's hard for us to get people to do that. It was really hard for us to get people to pivot. Now, Jim and Ankit both represent business owners who immediately went, oh dear God, I will be out of business in 3 months unless, and they were willing. There were a lot of business owners that not only did they not want to do it, but when we came up with very concrete small steps of like, here's what we could do first, second, third, they were still not willing to do it. And it was almost a fear of this change, fear of technology. And they just told us, listen, this will be done in 3 months and I'll just face my debt then. And that was a little bit harder. And what it let me know is that people were overwhelmed. It's not that they're not smart. It's not that they're not well-intentioned, they're overwhelmed. And if already they didn't have time to clean up house before, now in the middle of a pandemic, it's a lot to ask with everything else that they're doing. So what we're finding is that we are surveying our businesses and asking them, what do you need and how do you need it? It can't be done as entitlement. And then again, can we meet them part way, or can we get the extra set of hands to go in? So from that perspective, I would say, you know, you're talking about businesses that already don't have enough time to market themselves, let alone do a pivot and a strategic launch and look at that capital piece and get their systems in order. So all of those things become important. There's a lot of us that do technical assistance, but quite frankly, most of the businesses want the actual hands to come there and hold them and do the work. And that's a different piece, but we're actually looking at that possibility. But with that, I do want to turn it over to Ankit and Jim, because you both, not everybody knows these businesses. So while they have a West County outpost, they're also Central County and then much broader as they've pivoted what they do. And they know a lot, have been in these areas for a while, and just can share a wealth of information.
Leslie, before we jump over to them, I just had a question about what Dee just said about the hands-on. Do we have consultants that are available to that we're in connection with that can help some of these small businesses with hands-on?
We do, and that I have staff. The SBDC has staff. You just have to go through the registration portal, but they get prioritized if they go through folks like us. You also have really great folks like Renaissance. We work with them, especially with our Spanish-speaking businesses. But what you're going to find is these employers don't just want somebody over the phone. And trust me, we have sat there with like the SBA EIDL application in front of us and like literally helped businesses through, and it takes a long time. But then when you explain to them, they need somebody who can either come there, who can pour it into the machine, who can share what they're doing to really help do the work and train the person. Now, SBDC, Renaissance, all of those places, they're going to provide some free hours, but usually it stops at 2, maybe 5 hours, and then they need to start paying some rate or start working with somebody. And there's only so many hours that they can get for free. And honestly, they are stretched so thinly that in the end, they need me to have one person who 4 hours on this day, they really work for Nerd Crossing, right? And then 4 hours on a different day, they work for NARD 5-star, right? And just, they're literally doing this and then teaching their staff, okay, this is what I did. This is how you do this. Not just, oh, here's your password and your login ID, but really showing them. That's what they want.
So my mind is floating toward a potential incubator of professionals in corporate America who are striving to grow through the corporate ladder, who can use their expertise to volunteer to harness their skill set in some of these small businesses.
Kind of on an open-ended basis, right? So it's one of those like, I'm going to get you from point A to point B. Okay, yeah. But I do want to hear, let's put a pin in that, Vic. I want to hear from Jim and Ankit. You unmuted first, Jim, so I'm turning to you.
Oh, shoot, let me go back and
no take backsies.
Yeah, so that's a great idea, Vic, by the way. So the small business focus group's been really, really engaging, and it's heartwarming to hear all the stories that these business owners have had to go through over the last 8-9 months, right? I mean, literally have had to some of them completely redefine themselves in overnight. I mean, we got an email or a text or a phone call on March 16th that said you have to shut down your business tomorrow, or at midnight you're done. And you talk about pivoting quickly. You know, we're in the tech space, so we're fortunate where we're number one, able to have a remote workforce. A lot of people are not able to. And then number two, we're able to help other businesses create that remote workforce. So we're in high demand initially, right? So we're doing okay. We're not doing as good as we were pre-pandemic. We're doing okay. But in terms of you know, the equitable access to resources, there's a few issues that the group talked about I wanted to bring up, and I think we're putting together a presentation to is it November or December? I'm not sure when the date is. So maybe a little bit of a preview. I'll give you guys. One of them is access, right? That's you can't just throw a lot of money at this problem, which we learned quickly at the beginning of this pandemic. You know, here's billions and billions of dollars. It should fix things. Well, it doesn't work that easily, right? There's a subset of small business owners that don't have equitable access to those resources for many reasons. And some of them are exactly what Leslie said, you know, that number one, they don't have their books in order enough. Number two, they don't have the proper relationships with the banks. Number three, there's a inherent distrust of government, right? I found that kind of eye-opening when I was talking to some of my other colleagues. They are in fear of like what happens if I accept government funding, which to this day I'm fortunate that I got the PPP loan, but I still don't know what the forgivable terms of it are. Right. And I'm supposed to start repaying it next month, right? So you add all that up, you have an inequitable dilemma around access to the resources. The second problem is a lot of business owners don't know what the resources are, right? So where are the resources is like the first problem in our mind, and the group talked about like to solve. I mean, there's the SBDC, there's these wonderful groups here, workforce development boards, San Pablo Economic, you know, all of this stuff is there. Chambers, they're all great resources, but they're all disparate entities all over the place, right? So if there's a way that the task force can somehow create a centralized, and also market it, a great way to let small business owners know what the resources are, and then also help them apply for those resources, and then help explain what the contingencies are for those resources. I think that'll be a really great, great step in getting them equitable access to these resources. What else? And once you have the resources, what do you do with them, right? So that's going to vary from business to business. You know, the PPP was great in the sense that it worked for a lot of businesses that were able to get it, but at the same time, the rules kept changing, right? You had 8 weeks, you had to use 75% of it for payroll, and then that changed. And by the time it changed, the people that got it in the first round, it was too late. They had already spent and budgeted it for the 8 weeks. So now what do you do for the rest of the time? For us, we were in a fortunate position where, and a lot of business owners are, not a lot, but some were in the scenario where I had this money, I don't have enough business yet to hire all my employees back at pre-pandemic levels, which is what the intent is of the PPP loan. So what do? Do I just save that money, or do I hire my workforce back at pre-pandemic levels with not enough business? Yeah. You know, and so you're putting this, and you had to make the decision quick, right? Otherwise, you're now might be in violation of the loan. Right. Like the biggest fear of a business owner is more debt. Yeah. Right. So so you have to take this giant leap of faith of accepting money with strings attached. You don't know what the strings are yet. Right. You know, so fortunately, it looks like it's going to work out for many of us, but that uncertainty at the beginning of it was very, very nerve wracking. And you lose a lot of the flexibility of what to do with those funds because you just don't know what the rules are. So whatever funds become available, whether it's through Measure X or through more stimulus money, we have to make sure that the access to it is clear, but also that there is some flexibility in terms of what businesses can use it for, because the needs are going to vary from business to business, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll pause there.
No, well, Jim, just as a follow-up question,
Yeah.
in addition to the PPP loans, did anyone in the small group talk about accessing other local funds like small $5,000 chamber loans from anywhere?
Yeah, there was some discussion around some chambers that were giving, exactly. The Pittsburgh Chamber had a $5,000 grant. So you're going to hear about those if you're members of the chamber. If you're not members of the chamber, you're not going to hear about them, right? But those were pretty far and few that I was aware of. And now the other thought is, and we talked about this too, is there's been a lot of focus on providing money to businesses that have had a severe decline in revenue, 50% or more.
Okay.
And a lot of the focus has been on those businesses. Well, what about the businesses that have had to completely go to bare bones? I'm running the leanest I've ever have in my 10 years.
Right.
And we're not hitting 50% revenue drop, but we're down, of course. But we may not qualify for potential future funding because we don't hit these precipitous drops in revenue, which I think is a little unfair. I think there needs to be more focus potentially on these other businesses that might have a better opportunity to survive in the long run.
Okay.
Right. 30% down, for example.
Yeah. For those of you now joining us, this is the funding priority group drilling down a little bit about what small business owners have said about their priorities. So I would love to just, Ankit, did you want to add anything to what Jim was just sharing about?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we had to pivot and what we kind of saw through the course of this pandemic was we had to literally change some of our things that we functioned on, right? We are a dry cleaner. We service 80 plus hotels. Our retail business was down. Luckily, 2 years ago, we started doing a little bit of restoration work, and that kind of helped us survive it. But then, we had a team of about 40 employees, and how do we help them and how do we help the business, right? We had to literally downsize quite a bit. PPP came in, but the first thing that we saw with the PPP was, okay, 75% has to go towards, payroll. There's no income in. Where are you going to spend it, right? You can't just have people laying around. I mean, now it sets a bad culture in the company. Oh, we're just giving money away because. So as a business, we decided, let's try and figure out how we can do more work. Now, I wish there were ways or channels across the county or across the state where small businesses could apply for contracts, right? Things are not clear, simple thing. I mean, as a dry cleaner, we do alterations, we know how to make fabric and things like that. So we started making masks, just like a lot of other businesses do. Some of the resources, I wish those, the governors and the state, I even called our city of El Cerrito and to see if there's anything out there in terms of helping small businesses. But the resources, there are links, but there's no way to apply, right? There's no guidance as to what that means. And that was a thing and I would talk to some of our neighbors like, hey, what are you guys doing? And the first thing I was like, man, we're not doing anything because there's no relief for rent, there's no relief for a bunch of other things. And I've seen a few businesses close down because there's no way for these businesses to negotiate with their landlords, right? The fixed expenses don't go down. And that was our number one concern. Even up to this date, our rents are skyrocketing, right? And landlords don't want to negotiate. So any funding or any way to help small businesses sometimes negotiate these things to help them with their fixed cost, and also any kind of funding that's available out there, kind of collectively putting it where and how to apply. Right? Maybe we do workshops. Like when we did the PPP, we had workshops in our dry cleaning industry, and then that we helped out, and we also helped out our co-peers on how to apply. And luckily, we do our books fairly decently, right? I mean, we do it on a month-to-month basis, so we kind of know our numbers, and things of that type. But a lot of businesses don't know what they're getting into. So there's always that level of being scared. Oh, how do I apply? Like I tried to apply for a few grants, nothing was successful besides the PPP that got us, right? So, and luckily that actually helped us survive quite a bit. So yeah, I mean, especially with the fixed cost, I don't know if there are resources out there that would help a lot of the small businesses to get over that hump, because the government doesn't recognize, insurance, workman's comp, all that stays. It doesn't just go away, right? And that's quite a bit. If you have $100,000 payroll, I mean, 20,000 or 30,000 a month is fixed, right? Besides rent and other miscellaneous expenses. And that's quite a bit of chunk. And when, like for our hotel division, going from 200 bags a day to down to maybe 30 bags every 2 days.
That's a big drop. Yeah.
It's a big drop. I mean, we hardly getting any guest clothes, right? It's a big drop. And that's not going to come back anytime soon. So we had to pivot. And luckily, we're helping families out with fires and we're able to survive right now. But there are a lot of businesses out there because of not having any incoming, even though things are reopening, it's not meeting the needs. And that's where I think the number one struggle is, right? How do we get, I mean, the Amazons and businesses out there have ways to pivot and their reaches are out there. But for small businesses, if you don't pick up and deliver, if you don't, market enough, how do you get up there?
Right.
So funding wise, I think if we can help businesses to help them control if there are ways to fund their fixed costs, that would be great. I think that would definitely help them add something to their top line, right? If there are contracts available in the state, or if there's a way to, help them with their top line, that would be, I think, another awesome way to. And if there are subsidies out there available where they can hire more employees and something that's kind of curtailed, that will also help a small business.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, Ankit, thank you. That is super helpful to think about, and thinking about not just the state getting better at openness, but like all the different units of government that have any kind of services. There is more work to be done in COVID as it relates to protecting employees. I know I'm an elected school board member. And so as we think about all the things that we need to safely reopen schools in person, that is an important opportunity. And how can we structure things to still comply with the law, but also how can we be flexible enough to support small business and create a business opportunity there? Okay. So, we are have everybody back, I think. Yes, Lindy, am I correct? Okay. Now our goal here was to give each group a chance to report out on, sort of one action item. And I think if I were going to just sort of sum up what we were talking about, what was great is that Jim and Ankit were sharing kind of a sneak preview of what we'll hear about as a large group over the next couple of months, about what we've heard from the small business focus groups about what their experiences have been and how we might take all of these disparate resources. And one really important thing that this task force could do is try to bring all of those together and then market it. What came to my mind is what could we do perhaps through the community warning system that goes to everybody's cell phone about what could we do to help small business, in terms of getting the word out. So we have so many smart folks that work in different parts of government. And I would love for everybody to put their, best thinking about what data can we use, what resources, what connections can we use to people that need it, to think about how we can put that together and support small business. So as we did identify on the agenda, and as I said earlier, we are really thinking about action. And I wanted to if we could just hear from every small group. So Lindy, so that was kind of what we talked about in terms of funding priorities, right? And there may be more county money if Measure X passes, there may be state money, there may be federal money. And also too, I want us to think about discrete things that perhaps companies and philanthropic entities could potentially fund. So then that's true across all the different issue areas. So Lindy, can I impose on you to talk about healthcare?
Yes, I was breaking up a little bit, so hopefully that doesn't happen now. But we had a good discussion. I think we really decided that we wanted to concentrate on kind of how someone enters that first enter into a healthcare career and strengthening career exploration in our county. There was some other conversations that happened that I think will continue in our group about really trying to narrow in on gaps and narrow in on kind of where things get stuck.
Can I just stop you? What does it mean to this group about what career exploration is?
So there are opportunities at the community college level for you to take a class that allows you to look at what healthcare careers exist and how you get into them. They've been able to bring that to the K through 12 level. However, dual enrollment has been a little bit of a struggle and access has been a little bit of a struggle. And I think there's also a question of, well, how do we make that more available to the broad public, not just to K through 12, but also to say like, well, what if you are looking to reskill?
Right.
So just, increasing accessibility to this class that already exists.
Okay. Great.
And then we also had a conversation about the recognition that really on the job access, even shadowing or small internships really makes a huge difference because it really brings that to the forefront and gives people the experience of what that job might look like or feel like. But the resources to do that are limited, and not just financial resources, but staffing resources. And so it looks like Kaiser's really looking at that and thinking about expanding and what expanding something like KP Launch would look like. But just really trying to strengthen those partnerships and see if there's any opportunities that might be there that wouldn't be as long-term as an internship, but maybe would still give people access to understanding that job better and therefore able to maybe engage in it or see themselves in it. You are muted.
Great. Anything else?
Nope, just that I hope that we continue to talk.
Okay, great. Pam, can I impose on you? Are you reporting out for the supporting the industrial base? No. Who is doing that? Laura, are you doing that? Patty?
I could.
Okay, cool. Kish, perfect.
Yeah, no, although anybody please jump in. I just quickly, Pam is working on, through her work at the state commission, a small business procurement and sourcing program. She's developing that and is going to share with us whether that's an opportunity to build on that and do something here regionally or locally. So that's something that's a potential. But secondly, the group also, there was some energy around continuing to talk about this perception gap and connectivity gap between, how robust and vibrant and exciting industrial occupations and careers can be. But there continues to be both a sort of perception gap on the part of teachers, parents, students about, how exciting, viable, and really lucrative and, as I said, exciting those occupations can be. So we feel like there's a communications effort that needs to continue to try to promote the vibrancy and excitement of those types of careers. And then substantively, as Keith pointed out, this work in terms of developing real pathways, real programs across the county, across the region, there's a great supply of very successful and meaningful programs that are helping to steer students and job seekers into these types of careers. But yet there still seems to be kind of a connectivity gap between the various programs that makes them isolated at times and not building on one another in a way that we think that they might. So in short, we want to continue to flesh out how we might improve the visibility, connectivity, and frankly, just the brand of these types of education and training programs to lead people into these careers that are a lot more vibrant and have greater potential than they're known for.
Well done. That is a great summary. Thank you very much. Can I go to you, Donna, and talk about wage subsidies?
Yes. We were a very small group. There was Patience, myself, and we had Kirsty from Spark Point who was filling in for Betty. So very small group. And we still landed on the same two things that we had the last meeting we had, which are very similar to what you said, Kristen. We need to market and outreach this resource better. The Workforce Development Board has funding, has always had funding to support opportunity for on-the-job training, subsidized employment. We don't do a good job of marketing and outreaching it, and we need to support the onerous process by helping employers through the process and the paperwork. So those were pretty much our two things that we think we need to do to increase the outreach and the opportunity for this resource.
Great. You know, it's interesting, right? There's such a synergy. I mean, Vic was identifying in our group that thinking about ongoing in-kind kind of corporate mentoring for small business to help them do the structural things to access available resources in an ongoing, not time limited way. Because some of those things are, here's 2 hours, here's 2 hours. And in thinking about it, Donna, it's like could we do the same thing perhaps with public sector experts to help blow up some of those barriers and get to the end zone? You know, like kind of how can we connect people? I mean, I think that there's just a lot of similarity there. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Bob, are you going to report out on broadband?
Yeah, I'll take a whack at it. So our group consists of Ken Mintz, myself, Linda Best, and Laura Case. And we initially started talking about, are there examples where municipalities, cities in particular, with private industry that have developed a connectivity strategy? And we kind of looked around the room a little bit and said that there's been discussions, but there's nobody really making the case. And so we then started focusing on what would it be like to have a statewide, and others can feel free to chip in. And we thought about your relationship with the Real Coalition, and we realized that there's a statewide broadband initiative going on that's being led by Kana Pereira, who's in the agency that Kish used to lead at GoBiz, is the statewide broadband guy. And we thought about, what if we developed a policy agenda and led it to the state? Would that help us with advocating for our municipalities to get some direction in that regard? There's no question that underrepresented populations, students, and others are having the most difficulty with digital literacy, and so that was kind of where we landed on for that process. Others,
Right.
Ken or other, real quick.
No, the only other thing that I would add is, a real interest, I think, in trying to create more partnership between industry and municipalities in terms of trying to find solutions, quickening permitting processes, so that when there are available opportunities for developing infrastructure, that we can move more swiftly in making that happen.
Okay, great.
At the state task force level, this is pretty much what Tom Steyer is focused on with his company NextGen, is this whole digital divide. And so you might want to look at the work already happening through at the state level and through his group.
Great tip.
Great, thanks, man.
So we're at 10 o'clock. These hours go very quickly. But with all of these report outs and these different strains, and I'll go back to the two strategies that I mentioned earlier in terms of rapid redeployment out of central Indiana and this people-focused approach to support manufacturing. We have lots of marching orders to help move us forward. So we will be getting together actually in just 3 weeks' time, which might feel like 100 years from now, depending on how the next 7 days go, because we do have an important election coming. So, but our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 18th. We wanted to meet during the third week. So we're going to meet during the third week of the month in both November and December. And I'm sorry, I did not actually send out the calendar invite for this yet. Look for that coming in your inbox. And then we'll also get those for 2021 onto your calendars. But thank you to Jim and Ankit for joining us, and Liz for the first time. I am a library nut, so Liz, we should talk offline. But just again, stay safe. Enjoy the moderate orange tier, and stay safe as we move forward. And we'll see you on November 18th. And thanks to Ruth, you put some great suggestions in the chat there. I think it's just great for us all to get together. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month.
Take care, gang.
Good vote.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.